Hi there, and welcome to the Mindful Marathon podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Quirk, a run coach and pediatrician. Mindful Marathon is all about helping runners of all types to run their own race. Whether you are a seasoned runner or you're just getting started, I want to let you know that you're welcome here and that you're in the right place. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, I have a very special guest with me in the studio. I have my friend, Dr. Tracy Asamoah here. She is a fellow physician, a leadership coach, and a consultant who helps physicians and healthcare leaders grow into sustainable human-centered leadership. With more than 20 years of experience as a psychiatrist, she brings a neuroscience-informed, whole-person approach to coaching. She partners with leaders in academic medicine, healthcare organizations, and higher education, navigating transitions, complex organizational challenges, and periods of change. And I am very excited to have her on the show. Welcome, Dr. Tracy.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you, and I'm excited to talk to you about your fitness and running journey over the years.
Yeah, likewise. Yep.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself before we dive in, and then we'll get to our topic.
Yeah. Like you said, I am a leadership coach and I actually do coaching, coach training, consulting, writing exclusively. I don't practice clinically anymore. And I am in Austin, Texas, where I am able to work and enjoy the beauty of going outside, being in Austin, enjoying nature as part of my everyday life. So I've actually been able to set up the best of both worlds, working from home, getting out, enjoying nature, a community that I love. I have a husband and two daughters, and one that just started college this year. So that's been a whole journey and adventure. But yeah, that's me.
Yeah, and before we got on here, you were telling me, and I know you've talked about your dad quite a bit, that he
Yeah.
is a marathoner and a very avid runner. So you were exposed to running early on, I think.
Oh, really early. In fact, I remember when my dad started, so my dad started running in, I think, around his 40th birthday. So he, when I was growing up, did all sorts of sports. He played on the community baseball league and he played basketball for a while and racquetball. He used to take us to the Y with him. My brother, have an older brother. He would take us to the Y with him after work and we would go play around and so he's always been athletic. And then for some reason, when he was around 40, decided to start running and got into marathons. And so was a marathon runner maybe until his 50s and ran a few marathons every year. So he was always
Wow.
training. He was always trying to get his personal best. He was very consistent and committed to it. And so I grew up not just seeing running as being a very accessible form of exercise, but seeing consistency in exercise being a part of life because I don't ever remember him not exercising. He's 83 now.
Yeah.
So he now goes to the gym 5 days a week and he golfs 3 days a week. And he says he doesn't run anymore, except he'll maybe jog a mile on the treadmill for his warm up. And so his hips and knees are great. He's in great shape. He really has continued the consistency. And so I think I got that mindset of exercise being a consistent part of life from him as
Yeah.
a and I was never a marathoner. It was, I think, a 10K was the most I ever wanted to do. I get bored easily. And so the idea of running for a couple of hours, it was just being out there and doing that just was not something I wanted to do. An hour was about the most I could do. But the idea of having a consistent form of moving my body and that just being, I eat and I sleep and I exercise has been something that has been present for me for most of my life. Admittedly, I have been more consistent at some times than others,
Yeah.
but once I had kids I think that's when it really settled into being something that in some way, shape, or form, I was consistently doing something.
Yeah, yeah, your dad sounds a lot like my mom, although my mom's not a marathoner, but she's very active. And
Mhm.
she is in her late 70s, almost 80, and walks most of the days of the week, like 4-ish miles, like
Mm.
most of the days of the week, but a very brisk walk. Like people cannot
Yeah.
keep up with her.
Well, I love that though, because, and here's what I've decided is my dad is 83, going to the gym, playing golf.
Mhm.
He retired and got bored, so started working for the Census Bureau and like canvasses neighborhoods on foot. Interview, like he just has to be doing something. But I
Mhm.
look at him and like, all right, I guess I have to keep exercising until I'm 83. Well, I guess I'm gonna have to keep. When he stops is the age where I will allow myself to say, okay, you can slow it down. But as long as he's still going, I'm like, okay, I've still got another couple of decades of exercise in my life because clearly he hasn't slowed down. So that is the model that I hold in my head. I want to age like he's aging.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's right. My mom, we joke, my niece and my sister were just visiting her in Florida. She spends the winter in Florida.
Mm.
And my niece was saying, like, Auntie M, she doesn't stop. She's always out walking on the beach and out like walking with her friends and going here and there. And
Yeah.
I was like, I know, Grace, but this is goals, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. We wanted to talk, this is a great segue into what we wanted to talk about, but how exercise changes over the years and like how we see it in different transitions. So maybe can you talk a little bit about, I know you dabbled in running for sure and you've stayed consistent with exercise, but maybe just talk about how it's looked over different periods of life. I think that would be helpful for everybody.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think one of the biggest changes was that I went when I was much younger from I'm going to exercise because I want to look a certain way and I want my clothes to fit a certain way. It was so much more about, it wasn't even necessarily making the connection around how I wanted to feel. So much was I just want to look a certain way and I want to have my clothes fit a certain way. And so, like late teens, 20s, beginning life, that's where it was. And honestly, sometimes that was more successful than others because that was not a very rooted goal to have. But I think that's the goal that you have in your youth when you're
Yeah.
still figuring out life. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis when I was 30, and I had my first kid at 32, 33. And at that point, I started thinking a lot more about what does longevity look like? How do I want to age? How do I want to be present as a mom? And how do I want pregnancy to feel? And so I started seeing exercise more in terms of how I wanted to feel and how
Mhm.
I wanted to benefit my body and my health overall. When I had my kids, I was part of a mom's exercise group. I did that for I did that basically until they were like school aged and work got busy and I couldn't fit it in as easily. But that I think also became exercise became more a part of my lifestyle and not something that I was doing for a goal, but something I was doing because this is just how I live my life. I live my life by trying to get a certain amount of sleep and eating a certain way and exercising, whatever that exercise looks like. I think my most recent shift has been exercising for someone who is now in the second half of the century of my life. And postmenopausal and wanting to have good bone health and looking at how my metabolism has changed and how my hormones have affected my body and really wanting to maximize aging well. And so I have, where running has always been my go-to, and it's always been the thing that, like, if I just wasn't in a place, I didn't have the time or the energy to think of something more creative to do, I would at least be able to get some running shoes and go running on a regular basis.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've shifted to being really intentional about the form of exercise I'm doing and the outcome I want to have. And so thinking of what's best for bone health and building muscle mass. And so I hired a trainer that I see a couple days a week, which also is the first time I've actually enjoyed exercise. I actually don't like exercising. I don't even really love running. I just do it because I don't. It's not fun. I've tried to figure out how to make it fun and how to
Yeah.
like it. I think it was more fun when it was in a group.
Yeah,
But I don't like running in groups. But getting a trainer and doing strength training, for some reason, I love that.
that's great.
I'm like, why didn't I do this like 30 years ago? Why didn't I figure out? Probably because I couldn't afford it
Yeah, yeah,
initially.
yeah.
It's also really expensive. So that would not have been an option when I was in college. But I have really loved working out with someone who, first of all, I just love my trainer. He's funny. He's an ex-athlete that was a trainer on a college football with one of the big,
Oh, wow.
state college football teams for years, and now does private training and trains athletes on the side. And so I like this idea of someone who was like training like football players and just has, and I'm like, oh yeah, like I can get out if I really wanted to, I could probably get out there with those guys. Like I couldn't, but I can dream about it because I'm like, at least I know how to train like they do. But
Yeah,
it's a lot of fun and I like pushing my body. I like seeing what I could do. I like getting stronger and feeling stronger. And so that has probably been the biggest shift.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I love your story about the trainer. I think too, there's a couple things here. I love having working with somebody one-on-one. I now understand the power of coaches in various different parts of
Mhm.
my life. And I will say a recent story, I was not a swimmer at all, and like I got into swimming after I had an injury, like I sprained my ankle in the garden like
Mm,
a lot of years ago, and I
yeah,
couldn't run. I had to wear a boot and let it rest. So I found my way to swimming and I was very slow. And as the coach said, you're making the motions but not going anywhere. Anyway, but after working with a couple of coaches, it's always amazing to me, like how much more progress you can make in such a short amount of time when you
mm,
have somebody like observing exactly what you're doing. I think that's right with strength training as well.
yeah,
If you can get a personal trainer or have a small group where someone
yeah,
is looking at your form and looking at which muscles have weakness compared to others and trying to
yeah.
stabilize your right and your left, like that has been very helpful in the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years for me. I am now in my early 40s and perimenopausal. So
Yeah, yeah.
we need different things at different times.
And I think I'm also at a time in my life for lots of reasons that I am really allowing myself to think about what I need and how I want to feel and really serving that. And it helps that my kids are older and I don't have to devote all of that time and energy to running their life and helping them grow up. They're now at the point where they can do so much for themselves. And so it's also nice to be at that point where I can focus on those things. I did a DEX scan, I think in the spring, and saw that my lean muscle mass and bone density were actually pretty good. And so that also motivated me to want to preserve that. I'm like, all right, so I'm starting off with a good foundation. So what can I do to improve it even more? Like I really want to get my lean muscle mass a little bit better. And just if I can just preserve the bone density that I have, then that would be great. And so I think that was further motivation. Like I can age well and I have a lot of control over what that looks like. And so what can I be doing to be intentional about that?
Yeah. And you said you don't really like to exercise. What gets you like out of bed to tie on your sneakers?
I mean, I think some of it is just personality. And so it isn't because I'm thinking, oh, I'm excited to go on that run. And it's not even thinking, oh, I get to be outside. It's not the pair of sneakers. It's just that I've committed to doing. So it used to be that I've said I'm going to do this, and so I'm going to do it. What helps me is having a routine. And
Mhm.
so I exercise 5 days a week, and I know what form I'm doing on each day. This is a
Mhm.
strength day. This is a dynamic day. This is a mobility day. I already have that set. And so it's easier for me just to plug into that routine and know
Yeah.
that this is just what I do. And I think in the back of my head that I feel good physically, I feel good mentally when I do this. I know this is really important and I like feeling that way. I know that in lots of ways, I'm happy with how I'm aging, how I'm feeling. I'm happy, I think, also with how I've managed having an autoimmune disorder and
Yeah.
feeling like this has probably been a really important part of that being really manageable. And I think it's a combination of that stuff. This is just what I need to do. I wish I could say that I found the thing that makes it fun.
Yeah.
I do have fun with the trainer. I do the exercises we do. I like lifting. I like doing bench presses and I like seeing how heavy I can lift. I think so that feels more fun than anything else has.
Yeah.
I have sometimes I go with a partner, another guy who this trainer actually works with. And so sometimes we'll go together and I like working out with him. That's really fun. And my trainer's just funny and he has lots of stories and he's a chatty extrovert and
Yeah.
I'm introvert that can extrovert, but it exhausts me. And so I could just let him go and tell me stories about his family and his days training and I can, and he's a musician also, so he'll tell me about his music. Like I could just listen to that, do my exercise, challenge myself, and that feels really good.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds
Yeah.
like me too. I can extrovert myself, but I get tired really quickly.
Yeah, yeah.
But I will
So,
listen to the extroverts talk. I love that.
yeah, that's great. I can do that as long as I only have to be like a third of the conversation generation, I'm fine.
Yeah, yeah. I know as you were talking to, I was thinking about my own relationship with running and how that has changed over the years. But like when I first got into longer distances, I feel like I did catch like a little bit of a running bug and I like signed up for tons of races and I
Yeah.
was really very intent on getting faster and very focused on like training cycles and speed work and all those things. And I don't know, I'm not in that season of life anymore. Not to say I'm
Yeah.
not still competitive with myself, and sometimes I do a training cycle to try to get a PR in a race, but I'm much more
Yeah.
about like longevity, like what's going to keep me running for as long as possible without hurting myself.
Right. That's the
It's a
other
different
thing. Yeah.
focus.
Yeah, it is also, I agree that part of the shift in exercise for me has been what is going to protect me, what is going to be useful, what is going to have the outcome I want, but also what are the things that are going to minimize me injuring myself or wearing down parts of my body that I don't want to wear down too quickly.
Yeah.
Um, I was similar. There was, I think, between my 30s to early 40s when I was doing some races and running, there was this, I would set goals and that was there. There was just, I would have my regular kind of exercise running that I was doing on a regular basis, and then I would say, I'm going to do a race now. I'm going to see if I can get a good time. And that at some point just wasn't important. It wasn't a motivator anymore. Actually, I had a conversation with my trainer this morning about the difference between, and he says he has clients that some are working for specific goals and they have that carrot dangled out there and
Yes.
they're working for that. And once they get that, then they're like, okay, what's the next thing? And he says, and you're at this point where you're doing it because it's a lifestyle,
Yes.
that exercise is a lifestyle. You don't have a specific goal that motivates you. Just this is part of what you do and who you are. And he says, not that one is better than the other, but just it's interesting to note that there can be a difference for different people at different times.
Yeah, and I think I've found that I like to do, I'm a little bit more open-minded about trying other things. And so
Mhm.
since I started swimming, like we've done a couple of like triathlons and
Yeah.
we've done like there are some events where you can do like a swim and a run. So they have a triathlon, but
Yeah.
another option is to swim and run, and I've done that. And it's just like a totally different thing, but just to try
Yeah.
something different that I didn't think I would do. I don't know, just to keep it interesting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's nice to I also like the idea of being at a level of fitness where I can try something different and not feel like, oh my gosh, I would never be able to do that. Or travel. When I
Yeah.
travel with my family, it almost always includes something really active. So we'll have a day that we've just dedicated the day to a bike ride around the city and we're just gonna all get bikes and ride. If we travel where they have any sort of swimming, my kids, we went to Tulum a few years ago and they wanted to go on the cenotes and do snorkeling and just any kind of swimming they could do. And so I like also feeling like at any time, whatever we decide, I physically feel comfortable being able to do it.
Yeah.
And I want to preserve that for as long as possible.
Yeah, yeah, my husband and I like to hike, and that was not something that like I would do with my family, like when we
Yeah.
would go on vacation when I was a kid. Even though my parents were very active, but just not like into hiking. But my
Yeah.
husband and I, at least I would say probably twice a year, like our trips are built around a hike or a
Mm,
race or something like that. And
yeah.
there's ample resting as well, but also activity.
Oh,
Yeah, but I like to know that we have that level of fitness that we can just pick up and do that,
yeah, for
you
as
know?
long as possible.
Yeah, huh? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Maybe can I ask you from your experience, from a neuroscience perspective, why are habits and identity so intertwined with how we approach exercise? I think this is especially important for like high achievers and
Yeah.
like the physicians we work with in
Yeah.
different ways, but yeah.
Yeah. Here's what I think a couple of things happen. I think early in life we get locked into certain identities and beliefs about who we are and what we can do. And I think exercise can be a part of that. We can identify as people who exercise and feel that's a part of our life and feel that it is accessible. And so we try things and do things. And then I think there are people who, for lots of reasons, didn't have the opportunity to have exercise as part of their life early on. It doesn't feel accessible. It doesn't feel like something that will either it might feel hard or it doesn't feel safe or it doesn't feel interesting or fun. And so then you become a person who doesn't do that thing. And I think for folks like physicians who are high achieving, I think that can create a lot of tension. I think for people who identify as people who are those people who incorporate exercise, like then that just those people, I think, just start doing a lot of different things. They want to go on hikes or they want to run. Or my husband he likes to bike. That was a big part of what he did. When he was in medical school, he went to medical school in Los Angeles, and
Oh,
he loved to go with a group of friends biking up and down the coast. And they would go for like these
oh
20
yeah.
and 30-mile bike rides. And now more recently, he's gotten into working on like punching heavy bags and boxing kind of stuff and sparring.
Okay.
Which I'm just like, why do you want? But as a high achieving person who has always felt that exercise has been accessible, he is he wants to be able to visualize that he can become really good at that. He could become a powerful, like someone who could spar. And so there's just always a sense of I want to achieve and get this next thing. And then I think for people who that doesn't feel like an easy go-to, there has to be something that happens that allows them to learn a different way to see the accessibility of exercise. I think it has to become something that you first decide to do, and then you reverse that thought about it not being accessible or something that you can't do, or that even that because it doesn't feel fun, that it's something that you're not going to do. And then
Mhm.
I think it just becomes, I think all things with habits, we start to rework those neural pathways, and then it becomes something that we do. We
Yeah.
just do. And I think for me, I never did any sort of formal sports in school. It just wasn't part of my growing up. But I did things on my own because my dad was a runner. He tried to get my brother and I into exercising and running with him when we were young.
Mhm.
I did a lot of bike riding. And so I always felt like it was accessible, but it wasn't part of my life. And so I was one of those people that had to see exercise as something that I valued and wanted to do, but I had to train my brain to see it as an expectation that it would be part of my life. And that took a lot of me starting to do it for other external reasons, but
Yes.
getting into the habit and then internalizing it as being part of who I was or who I am. And so I think it's like anything, we can, especially, and I think the piece of being high achieving is because I set the goal that I wanted to incorporate that. I was just going to continually fight until I figured out how can I make this become something that at least I enjoy and seek out enough that I'll keep doing it. And what will
Mhm.
that look like?
Yeah. I feel like the undercurrent of this is you and I have both developed consistency
Yeah.
and just become familiar with that. And like listeners of the podcast, I feel like I talk about consistency in nearly every episode somehow, but it
Yeah.
comes up every time.
But that's what it is. It
Yeah.
really is. It really is just showing up. Like it really is just putting on the sports bra and the workout, whatever the workout clothes, and putting on the shoes and just taking that first step. I remember when at some point I had stopped exercising regularly when my kids were maybe early grade school. I was working, life was just really busy. I'm not a morning person, so I was never going to be the person getting up at 6 a.m. to exercise. And so I wasn't fitting it into my life on a regular basis. And I was still doing it maybe 2 or 3 times a week, but I wanted it to be more.
Hmm.
And to do it more than that, I told myself, okay, I don't care if it's 5 minutes. I'm just going to do it 5 times a day.
Yeah.
And I was doing, and I think at that time I was probably running, like I would go out for 30 minutes and say, okay, I got to jog in or something. And that was all I could do. And then I decided I'm going to add 2 more days because I want to do something 5 days a week. And I think in the beginning, I'm like, I'm just going to do it for 15 minutes. I don't even care
Hmm.
what I do. I can change my mind. I could do whatever I want. It's just going to be something for this many minutes a day. And so that built the consistency of just showing up.
Yeah.
And then over time, I just kept adding to that. And so it really does, for me, the foundation is the consistency of showing up, giving yourself grace around what showing up involves. It can involve anything. Even if I did it for 10 minutes, 10 minutes of really relaxing yoga, like great. That was 10 minutes of something my body was doing. And
Yeah.
over time, that has continued to build up to what it looks like now.
Yeah. Yeah. My thought is always something is better than nothing. And
Yeah.
I give myself and my athletes too, the out is basically, okay, tie on your sneakers and go out for 10 minutes. And
Yeah.
if you're not feeling it and it's not happening, then turn around. And I don't think there's ever really been a time that I've turned around and come home now that I think about
Yeah.
that. Like that was the thought when I went out. I've always maybe not done the entire workout as planned on the calendar, but probably did more than 10 minutes.
Yeah, because once you and you realize once you show up and you get yourself out there, whatever resistance was there, it actually does get a little bit
It,
smaller. It doesn't
yeah,
necessarily go completely away,
yeah,
which is okay, but it's often a little bit smaller than it was when you were sitting wherever you were deciding that I don't really feel like getting out there.
yeah, yeah. And usually I am also not really a morning person, but I do exercise like first thing in the morning. But there are times when I don't want to get up, especially in winter. Like here,
Yeah.
it's dark
Oh,
and it's cold.
yeah. Yeah.
It's easier in the nicer weather.
I have to say, I am not an early morning exerciser, but I am a morning exerciser because I also know that if I
Yes,
haven't exercised before lunch, it's probably not going to happen.
same.
Yeah.
The day just gets filled with other things.
Yeah.
Sometimes in the afternoon, I will get a walk in or maybe I don't know, like a little bit of strength training, like a very short kind of thing. But yeah, if it doesn't happen before noon, it's usually not happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I think this was a very helpful conversation for everyone. Can you tell everyone where they can find you?
Yeah. I am at sageelementscoaching.com and I am also on LinkedIn under Tracy Asamoah,
Okay.
MD. Yeah.
I'll leave the link in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you everybody for listening, and we'll see you next week. Thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed the episode, please share it with a friend. And if you have a moment, please rate and review the podcast so that we can reach and encourage others to tie on their sneakers and join us out there on a run. See you next time.